The storm didn't just fall, it attacked the city with the fury of something wounded. Rain came in horizontal sheets, bending parking lot signs like they were made of rubber, turning the hospital's asphalt into a black mirror that reflected nothing but chaos. Dr. Emily Carter's sneakers sank into unseen puddles as she trudged toward her car, each step a battle against the wind that grabbed at her coat like greedy hands. 16 hours in the ER had left her spine fused into a permanent curve, her vision speckled with afterimages of flashing monitors. She'd lost count of how many times she'd washed her hands, the skin between her fingers now cracked and stinging. Then, the sound. Not the predictable wail of sirens, not the metallic ping of rain on dumpsters, but a whimper so small it shouldn't have survived the storm's roar. Yet it did, slicing through the noise like a scalpel through flesh. Emily froze. Her breath hung visible in the air as she turned, scanning the darkness between the overflowing dumpsters where the hospital's yellow light didn't quite reach. There. Movement. A golden blur resolved into shapes. 2 ears flattened against a skull too small, ribs that cast shadows between them, paws that couldn't possibly have carried him this far. The puppy, because that's what he was, though barely, lay curled in a fetal position, his fur so soaked it looked painted on. Water cascaded off him in rivulets, carving tiny trenches in the grime beneath his body. But his eyes, God, his eyes, wide, wet, human. Not the vacant stare of a feral animal, but the deliberate, desperate focus of someone who'd been waiting, praying, for her specifically. When their gazes locked, the puppy didn't look away, didn't growl, just lifted his head an inch, his entire body trembling with the effort, and let out a sound that wasn't quite a bark, wasn't quite a cry, but something in between. A plea translated across species. Emily was moving before she decided to. Her knees hit the asphalt, water seeping through her scrubs instantly. The puppy didn't retreat, didn't flinch. Just watched as she reached out, her fingers hovering an inch from his nose. "Shh, it's okay," she whispered, though nothing about this was okay. His nose was ice cold when he nudged her hand. Not sniffing, confirming. "You're real." Then he collapsed against her palm, his entire weight surrendering at once. Emily's throat closed. She'd seen this exact motion before, in the ER, when a terrified child finally spotted their parent in the crowd. That moment when fear releases its grip because someone came. Lightning flashed, illuminating the raw patches on his paws. Not cuts from glass or debris, but the kind of damage that came from miles of walking on concrete. His claws were split. One nail hung by a thread of keratin. "Jesus," Emily breathed. She scooped him up, and his body molded to her chest like he'd been shaped to fit there. His heartbeat thrummed against her sternum, too fast, too light, like a hummingbird trapped behind ribs. The wind screamed as she stood, clutching the puppy to her with one arm while the other fumbled for her keys. His fur smelled like wet earth and something faintly metallic. Blood, maybe, or the memory of it. He weighed nothing, less than nothing. A bundle of bones wrapped in golden fur, his breath coming in shallow puffs against her neck. The automatic doors hissed open, and the sudden warmth of the hospital hit them like a physical wall. The puppy stiffened in her arms, his nose working overtime to process the new scents. Antiseptic, stale coffee. The ghost of 1,000 hurried meals eaten standing up. "Doc?" Rodriguez called from the nurse's station, her eyebrows disappearing into her hairline. "We doing pediatrics and vet med now?" Emily didn't answer. Couldn't. because the puppy had just lifted his head and licked the raindrops trailing down her jaw. A deliberate gesture. A thank you. And in that moment, she knew. This wasn't a stray. This was a message with pause. The break room smelled of microwaved noodles and the acrid tang of overbrewed coffee. A scent so ingrained in the walls it had become part of the hospital's DNA. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their flickering glow turning the puppy's golden fur into a patchwork of light and shadow as Emily worked the towel over his trembling body. Each pass revealed more damage, his ribs pressed up like piano keys beneath thinning skin. His paws, pink and raw, left smears of diluted blood on the towel, not from sudden injury, but from relentless friction. Miles of friction. His whiskers, half broken, twitched as water dripped from his muzzle onto the linoleum. Emily's fingers stalled mid-motion when her thumb brushed something coarse beneath his chin. Not fur, fabric, a ribbon. Faded blue, its edges frayed into feathery filaments, the knot loose enough to slip a finger through but tight enough to stay put. The kind of knot a child might tie, clumsy but determined. The puppy went preternaturally still as her nails grazed it, his breath hitching like he'd been waiting for this moment. "What's this, huh?" Her voice came out cracked, unfamiliar to her own ears. The ribbon gave way with a gentle tug, revealing its secret. A square of notebook paper folded so small it could have fit inside a gum wrapper. Soggy at the edges, the fibers starting to dissolve. Emily's pulse hammered in her throat as she peeled it open with surgical care, the paper threatening to tear along its waterlogged creases. The ink had bled, but the words stood stark against the damp page. "Please help my brother. 341 Cedar Lane. He's alone." The world narrowed to those 12 words. The hum of the fridge died. The flickering light stabilized into a glare. Even the puppy's panting seemed to mute itself. Alone. The word hooked into Emily's sternum and pulled, dragging up a memory she'd boxed away at 12 years old. Her own small hands pressed against a bedroom door, listening to the receding click of her mother's heels down the hallway. "Just for an hour, Emmy." But hours had claws. They scratched at the doorframe. They pooled in the corners like spilled ink. A wet nose nudged her wrist. The puppy, no, not just a puppy, a courier, stared up at her, his pupils blown wide with urgency. He licked the salt from her skin once, twice, his tongue rough as sandpaper. Not a random gesture. A prompt. "Hurry!" Emily's phone buzzed on the table. "Rodriguez. Social workers here for the Driscoll kid. You owe me coffee." The screen blurred. Cedar Lane was a 10-minute drive. The Driscoll boy needed his discharge papers. Protocol demanded she call animal control. The puppy's ribs expanded under her palm like a bellows. "Who wrote this?" she whispered, turning the ribbon over. A single brown hair clung to it, long, straight, human. The puppy whined, high and reedy, and suddenly Emily was 8 again, pressing a glass to the wall to hear her parents fight. Some sounds bypassed the ears and went straight to the marrow. This was one of them. She typed one-handed. "Need 20 minutes. Cover me." The moment she hit send, the puppy scrambled upright, his claws clicking against the linoleum. He didn't bark, didn't pace, just looked at her with those uncanny eyes, amber with flecks of green, like sunlight through a whiskey bottle, and waited. Emily's stethoscope lay coiled on the table, her badge still clipped to her scrubs. The break room clock ticked off seconds with metronomic indifference. Somewhere a child was counting those ticks. Somewhere a loan was growing teeth. She stood so fast her chair screeched. The puppy matched her movement, his tail giving a single decisive wag. Not joy, but purpose. They were going. The stairwell to 341 Cedar Lane wasn't just dark. It ate light. Emily's flashlight beam barely penetrated the gloom, dissolving into the kind of blackness that seemed to push back. The building exhaled a breath of mildew and rotting wood, the air so thick it coated her tongue like spoiled broth. The puppy in her arms became a live wire, his muscles tensing with each step, his nose working frantically. He'd stopped shivering. Now he vibrated. The door to 3B hung at a drunken angle, its hinges screaming when Emily pushed it open. The sound ricocheted down the hallway like a gunshot. Inside, the apartment wasn't just empty. It was hollowed out. The walls bore ghostly rectangles where pictures had been ripped away. The kitchenette held a single plastic bowl, licked so clean it gleamed under the flashlight. The carpet crunched underfoot, not with dirt, but with shattered drywall from a hole near the ceiling where rain had tunneled in. But the puppy wasn't interested in any of that. He lunged toward a narrow closet door, his claws scrabbling against Emily's arms hard enough to draw blood. Then, a sound. Not the groan of pipes or scuttle of rats. A human sound. A wet, shuddering sneeze that immediately dissolved into a cough. Not the polite cough of a cold. The kind that starts in the toes and wrenches its way up, tearing at the throat on its way out. The kind that makes nurses exchange glances. Emily was moving before the echo died. The closet door stuck, swollen with humidity, then gave all at once with a splintering crack. The beam of her flashlight juddered across. A nest of stained towels and what might have been a shredded hoodie. An overturned bowl, its rim gnawed in places. A bag of kibble and bits, torn open with surgical precision at the corner, and in the center curled into himself like a comma. A boy. Small. That was Emily's first thought. Smaller than he should be at 5 or 6. His knees drawn up to his chest like he was trying to fold himself out of existence. The blanket covering him wasn't fabric at all, but layers of newspaper glued together by sweat. His hair, dark with grease, stuck to his forehead in spirals. Then he turned his face toward the light. Emily's stomach dropped. His lips were split like dried riverbeds. His cheeks burned with fever, the red standing lurid against his ashen skin. But his eyes, they locked onto the puppy with a recognition so fierce it bordered on worship. You came back," the boy rasped. His voice was barely audible, the words sandpapered raw by thirst. The puppy became a golden blur, launching himself from Emily's arms. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just pressed his entire body along the boy's side, licking frantically at his fingers, his wrists, the hollow under his chin, as if trying to wash the sickness away. Emily knelt, her knees popping in the silence. The boy flinched when her shadow fell over him, his arms coming up in a reflexive curl. Not to fight, to shield. "It's okay," she started to say, then choked. Because the boy's wrists were a roadmap of half-healed scratches, not from abuse, from claws, tiny, desperate ones. The puppy's, she realized. Days of trying to wake him, to pull him up, to make him move. A single paw print stood out in the dust by the boy's feet, perfectly preserved, as if the puppy had stood sentinel there for hours, waiting, hoping. The boy coughed again, his whole body seizing with it. When it passed, he blinked up at Emily with glassy eyes. "Hero? Got you?" Something in Emily's chest cracked. She reached for her phone with numb fingers, her thumb hovering over 911. Then stopped. Because the boy's hand had shot out. Not to stop her, but to clutch the hem of her scrubs. His fingers barely had the strength to curl, but the message was clear. Don't let go. Outside, the storm finally broke. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 fists. Inside the closet, Emily gathered the boy, Jason, she'd learn later, into her arms. His body was a furnace against hers, his breath coming in shallow puffs against her neck. The puppy immediately wedged himself between them, his wet nose pressed to the boy's cheek. 3 heartbeats in the dark. Then Emily dialed. The boy's breath came in shallow puffs against Emily's collarbone, each exhale carrying the sour-sweet scent of ketones, the telltale odor of a body eating itself for fuel. His fingers, curled like autumn leaves around her scrub top, lacked the strength to truly grip. Yet when he spoke, the words landed like stones in still water. My dog went to get help. A pause. A wet cough that made his spine arch. Then, with terrible clarity, I told him, find a doctor. Emily's stethoscope slid from her neck, the earpieces clattering against the closet floor. The sound was absurdly loud in the cramped space. Her hands, steady through 18-hour shifts, through cardiac compressions, through suturing screaming toddlers, shook now with something deeper than fatigue. The puppy, no, Hero, his name was Hero, whined and thrust his muzzle into the boy's armpit, sniffing urgently. Not random nuzzling, assessment. Emily recognized the behavior, the same method EMTs use to check for trauma in nonverbal patients. Hero had done this before, recently, often. How long? Emily's voice cracked. She rephrased, pressing 2 fingers to the boy's carotid. His pulse fluttered like a moth behind glass. When did you send him? The boy's eyelids, papery with dehydration, drifted shut. When the lights went dark, his Adam's apple bobbed. Before the cough got loud, a timeline clicked into place. 1. Power outage, common in these crumbling apartments during storms. 2. Illness worsening. The loud cough, likely pneumonia-related. Pleurisy. 3. A child's desperate calculus. Emily's mind conjured the scene. A 5-year-old alone in the dark, measuring his fading strength against his dog's stamina. Choosing to risk Hero's life rather than succumb to silence. Hero licked the boy's palm, his tongue catching on cracks in the skin. Not playful licks. Targeted. The webbing between thumb and forefinger, a pressure point for nausea. The inside of the wrist, where veins show dehydration. This wasn't instinct. It was training. You taught him, Emily whispered. The boy's lips curved. Not a smile. A grimace. Mom's a nurse. She showed me. The revelation landed like a punch. The blue ribbon, hospital color-coded for pediatrics. The note's block letters, a child mimicking medical charts. Hero's route, straight to a major hospital, not random houses. Every detail had been orchestrated. Emily's tears hit the boy's forehead, mingling with his sweat. You're safe now, she lied, because the truth was unutterable. Safe children don't ration dog food into bowls they can't fill themselves. Safe children don't use newspapers as thermal insulation. Safe children don't send their only friend into a storm, praying he'll outrun their own decline. Hero wedged himself between them, his body heat searing through Emily's scrubs. His tail thumped once, not joy but confirmation. The boy's fingers found the puppy's ear, twisting gently in the fur. A ritual. Knew you'd come, the boy murmured. Emily's phone buzzed against her hip. The 911 operator's voice tinny through the speaker. Ma'am, is the child conscious? She opened her mouth, closed it. Because the boy's eyes had flown wide, his grip suddenly vice-like on her sleeve. "Don't say foster care," he gasped. "They'll take Hero. They always take him." The pieces rearranged. Always implied prior removals. The claw marks on his wrists, not just from this ordeal, but from previous separations. The way Hero had reacted to the social worker's scent at the hospital. Emily pressed her forehead to the boy's, their breath mingling. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Jason," a whisper. Then, even softer, "Jason Whitley." Hero whined, his whole body vibrating with urgency. Emily understood. She'd seen this in the ER, the moment when a patient's story clicks into focus, when symptoms become a person. She lifted the phone. "This is Dr. Carter. I have a 6-year-old male, febrile at 104.2, severe dehydration, probable pneumonia, history of medical neglect, requesting CPS liaison and veterinary transport." A beat. "The dog is non-negotiable." Jason's body went limp against hers, the last of his strength spent. Hero immediately curled around his head, his tail covering the boy's eyes like a living blindfold. Protection from light, from scrutiny, from separation. Somewhere beyond the closet, sirens wailed. Inside, 3 heartbeats synchronized, one fluttering, one steady, one wild with devotion. The ambulance lights painted the apartment walls in lurid streaks. Red, then white, then red again, like a panicked heartbeat given form. Jason lay cocooned in the stretcher's stark white sheets, his fever-flushed face the only color against the sterile backdrop. The oxygen mask swallowed half his features, its fogging plastic the sole proof he was still fighting. A paramedic's gloved hand reached to adjust the IV line. "Where's his mother?" The question hung in the air like a struck bell. Emily's arms tightened around Hero. The puppy's warmth bled through her scrubs, his muscles coiled like springs beneath golden fur. Across the room, the social worker, Ms. Delgado according to her badge, flipped through her clipboard with methodical detachment. The Guardian information section gaped blank and accusatory. No emergency contacts, no scrawled phone numbers, just empty lines and the ghost of some bureaucrat's expectation. Hero whimpered, a sound that started in his gut and vibrated through Emily's ribs. Before she could react, he launched himself toward the stretcher, his claws scrabbling against the gurney's metal frame. "Wait!" a medic began, but Emily was already moving. She caught Hero mid-leap, his body straining toward Jason with such single-minded purpose that his hind legs pedaled air. For one suspended moment, the entire room held its breath. The medics with their half-raised hands, Ms. Delgado with her poised pen, even the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Then Emily did the unthinkable. She set Hero on Jason's chest. The puppy didn't squirm, didn't lick, just settled his weight directly over Jason's heart, his chin resting on the boy's sternum. Jason's fingers twitched, weak but deliberate, burying themselves in Hero's fur. A monitor beeped, the oxygen mask fogged harder, and Hero's tail thumped, once, defiant. "See? I kept my promise." Ms. Delgado cleared her throat. "Animals aren't permitted in—" "He's a medical alert dog," Emily lied smoothly, her thumb finding the raw patches on Hero's paws. "Trained to detect seizures." The social worker's eyebrow arched. "There's no vest, no paperwork. His gear was lost in the storm." Emily met Jason's glassy eyes. "Ask the patient." Jason's nod was barely perceptible, but Hero reacted instantly, nudging the boy's cheek with his wet nose. A perfect pantomime of seizure response. Ms. Delgado's pen hovered. "We'll need verification from his pediatrician, Dr. Emily Carter. The words left her lips before she registered their weight. The lie should have tasted bitter. Instead, it felt like stepping into a coat that fit better than her own skin. The ambulance doors gaped open, swallowing half the stretcher. A medic reached for Hero. "No!" Jason's voice was a rusted hinge, but it stopped the room cold. His fingers knotted in Hero's fur. Not the weak clutch from before, but something primal. "He comes, or I don't." The threat hung between them. A 6-year-old bargaining with the only currency he had. His own survival. Ms. Delgado exhaled through her nose. "The dog stays with me until verification." Hero turned his head, his whiskey-amber eyes locking onto Emily's. A silent plea. A transfer of trust. She nodded. As they loaded Jason into the ambulance, Emily caught the precise moment the boy's fingers uncurled. Not in surrender, but in tactical retreat. Hero licked his palm once, a coded message in the language only they shared. Then the doors slammed shut. The silence they left behind was deafening. Ms. Delgado tapped her pen against the clipboard. "You're not really his doctor, are you?" Rain dripped from Emily's hairline, tracing the curve of her cheek like a tear. Not yet. Somewhere beyond the broken apartment walls, sirens faded into the storm. Somewhere, a puppy who'd crossed hell to keep a promise watched over his boy. And somewhere in the space between protocol and compassion, Emily made a decision. The pediatric ward smelled of artificial strawberries and the underlying bite of antiseptic, a scent that clung to Emily's scrubs no matter how many times she washed them. Outside Jason's room, the shift change chatter of nurses ebbed and flowed in waves, but inside, time moved differently. The plastic chair beside his bed had molded itself to Emily's shape over 3 sleepless nights. Its surface permanently warm now, like a stone baked by the sun. Jason's fever broke on the second dawn. She knew it the moment she walked in, not from the monitors, though his temp read 98.6 for the first time, but from the way Hero lifted his head from the boy's ankles. The golden retriever didn't bark, didn't wag, just blinked at her with those uncanny amber eyes, his muzzle resting on Jason's shin like a living, breathing blanket. "He's better," that blink said. "Now you can fall apart." Emily couldn't. Not when Jason's fingers still spasmed around the IV line in his sleep. Not when the bruises under his eyes lingered like smudged charcoal. She set down her offerings. A thermos of chicken broth, stolen from the residence lounge. A coloring book. Dinosaurs, because the nurse said he'd asked about them. A stuffed golden retriever, its fur impossibly soft compared to Hero's rain-matted scruff. "For when Hero can't visit," she whispered to the night nurse, who pretended not to see the contraband dog curled at Jason's feet. The days bled together in a watercolor of Hero's nose nudging Jason's limp hand every 2 hours. A silent drink this, as the boy sipped electrolyte solution. The way Jason's pupils dilated when flashlights checked his concussion, his gaze instinctively seeking Hero's fur to ground himself. The hollows above Jason's collarbones slowly filling in as pudding cups and saltines disappeared from his tray. Then, the question. It came on the 4th night, during the witching hour when hospital corridors grow quiet enough to hear ventilators sigh. Jason's fingers, still too thin but stronger now, fisted in Emily's sleeve. His voice was a rasp, worn raw by breathing tubes and unspoken fears. "Is Mom coming back?" 3 things happened at once. 1. Hero's ears flattened against his skull, his entire body tensing as if absorbing the blow for Jason. 2. Emily's pulse stuttered, her tongue suddenly too thick for her mouth. 3. The heart monitor betrayed her silence with a telltale spike. She reached for Hero instead of answering, her fingers sinking into the warm space between his shoulder blades. The puppy's fur was softer now, cleaned of storm debris and matted blood, but beneath it, she could still feel the ridges of his ribs. Proof that he'd starved himself to keep Jason alive. Jason's grip tightened. "She left before," he whispered, his free hand finding Hero's paw. "After Dad went away. She'd forget stuff, like buying food." A pause. "Or coming home." The confession hung between them, fragile as an icicle. Emily's mind raced through diagnoses. Depression? Substance abuse? Or simply a woman drowning in grief, leaving her child to tread water alone? Hero whined, low and deep in his chest. A sound Emily had never heard from him before. Not pain, not fear, grief. Jason pressed his face into the puppy's neck, his next words muffled by golden fur. Hero licked her face too, when she cried. But then, he chose me. The truth unfolded like a triage report. 1. A mother crumbling. 2. A dog forced to pick which soul to save. 3. A boy who'd sent his last friend into the storm rather than watch him starve. Emily's throat closed. She'd seen this before. The way love could twist into sacrifice. How the bravest children learned to let go before they were ready. But never so small. Never so soon. Outside, a code blue alarm wailed 3 floors down. Inside, Jason's breath hitched, his fingers tightening in Hero's fur. The puppy responded instantly, swiping his tongue across the boy's knuckles, once, twice, until the tension leaked from Jason's shoulders. Emily watched the ritual with a surgeon's precision. The exact pressure of Hero's paw on Jason's thigh. The way the boy's exhales synced to the dog's breathing. The unspoken language they'd forged in the dark. She thought of the stuffed animal now tucked under Jason's pillow. Of the broth he'd sipped without protest. Of how he'd flinched when social workers entered but leaned into Hero's weight. "I don't know," Emily finally answered, her thumb stroking the velvety spot behind Hero's ear. "But I know this. Hero chose you. And so did I." The heart monitor beeped. The night nurse's squeaky shoes passed by. And in the space between one breath and the next, Jason's fingers uncurled from her sleeve to rest atop Hero's head. A bridge of touch connecting all 3 of them. Somewhere beyond the hospital windows, the first light of dawn painted the sky in watercolor streaks. Inside, the vigil continued. The foster mother's minivan smelled of grape lollipops and fabric softener, a cloying, artificial sweetness that clung to the back of Emily's throat as she buckled Jason into the booster seat. His fingers, still fragile from dehydration, traced the stitching on his new backpack, a generic blue one provided by Child Services, already fraying at the straps. Hero sat statue still on the sidewalk, his golden fur ruffled by the October wind, his eyes never leaving Jason's face. "Can't he come just for tonight?" Jason whispered. His voice sounded raw from days of crying. Ms. Delgado's pen tapped against her clipboard, 3 sharp staccato beats. "Policy requires—" "I know." Emily squeezed Jason's knee through the open car door. "Hero needs his shots first. Remember? Like we talked about?" A lie. A necessary, brutal lie. The foster mother, Linda, her name tag read, smiled with all the warmth of a vending machine. "We've got a lovely goldfish, Jason. You can name him whatever." Hero's howl cut through the air like a siren. Not the mournful cry of a confused animal, but a sustained, piercing note that raised the hairs on Emily's arms. It wasn't protest. It was communication. Jason lunged against his seatbelt, his small hands pressed to the window, his breath fogging the glass as Hero's cry echoed down the hospital drop-off lane. Ms. Delgado startled. "Does he always do—" "No," Emily's voice cracked. "He doesn't." Because this wasn't noise. This was Hero's version of Jason's white-knuckled grip on her sleeve. A last desperate tether before the world tore them apart. The minivan pulled away. Hero's howl chased them for 3 blocks before dissolving into silence. Emily's apartment had never felt so hollow. The click of Hero's nails on hardwood, absent. The soft whoomp of a puppy collapsing onto her feet. Gone. Even the fridge hummed differently without Jason there to ask, "Can Hero have some?" Every time she opened it. She poured a glass of wine, poured it down the drain. The silence was a living thing, crouched in the corners, waiting to pounce. Then, the knock. Not the cheerful rap of a neighbor. Not the impatient thud of a delivery driver. 3 measured strikes that vibrated through the deadbolt. Ms. Delgado stood on the welcome mat. Emily had never noticed how unwelcoming those bristly fibers looked until now. Hero cradled against her chest like an offering. The puppy's fur was matted again, his ribs visible beneath his golden coat. He won't eat. The social worker's usual crispness had frayed. Won't sleep. The foster mom says he just waits by the door. A pause. They found Jason in the goldfish tank this morning, trying to teach it to fetch. Emily's hands were already reaching. Hero launched himself into her arms, his cold nose finding the exact spot where her tears had carved salty tracks down her cheeks. He didn't wiggle, didn't lick, just pressed his entire weight against her, his heartbeat thundering through both their ribs. "You came back." Ms. Delgado cleared her throat. "There's a provisional clause for emotional support animals." Emily buried her face in Hero's fur. It smelled of lavender detergent, the foster home, and beneath that, the faintest trace of Jason's strawberry shampoo, the hospital. "The evaluation period is 6 weeks. The clipboard appeared in her periphery. "Page 4 outlines visitation," Hero growled. Not at Ms. Delgado, at the clipboard. His lips peeled back just enough to show pearly canines, the same teeth that had gently carried Jason's socks when the boy was too weak to bend down. Emily took the paperwork with one hand, the other cradling Hero's trembling body. "We'll wait together." The family court smelled of lemon-scented disinfectant and the faint metallic tang of hope. Or maybe that was just the worn brass doorknobs, polished smooth by 1,000 nervous hands. Emily's palms left damp streaks on the final adoption petition as she smoothed it for the 12th time. Across the aisle, Jason swung his legs beneath the too-big chair, his sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. Every few seconds, his fingers crept toward the service dog vest they'd bought for Hero. Not because the golden retriever needed it anymore, but because Jason liked threading the straps through the buckles. "Like armor," he'd whispered that morning. Hero sat at perfect attention between them, his tail sweeping sawdust from the courtroom floor. His eyes, no longer whiskey amber but something brighter, fiercer, like sunlight through maple syrup, never left the judge's bench. "All rise." The bailiff's voice cracked the air. Jason shot up so fast his chair skidded backward, saved only by Hero's instant counterbalance, the dog's weight leaning just enough to stop the momentum. Judge Alvarez's black robes whispered across the floor as she took her seat, her gaze lingering on the trio. A doctor with shadows under her eyes, a boy with scars on his wrists, and the dog who'd brought them together in a storm. The questions came like snowfall, soft but relentless. "Dr. Carter, do you understand this adoption is permanent?" Jason's fingers twisted in Hero's vest straps. "Jason, do you want to live with Emily forever?" Hero's tail thumped once against the boy's ankle. The final decree hit the bench with a sound like a slamming door and an opening window all at once. Jason's new bedroom smelled of cedar closet panels and the lavender detergent Emily had bought specially because Hero likes purple things. Sunlight poured through curtains dotted with cartoon dogs, Jason's solemn choice after 3 hours of deliberation at Target. Hero exploded into the room like a golden firework. He didn't sniff the corners or inspect the bed. He knew this space, had helped pick the paint color, sunbeam yellow, had tested the mattress firmness twice, had approved every stuffed animal by licking their noses. Now he launched himself onto the duvet in one glorious arc, spinning 3 times before collapsing in a heap of fur and joy directly atop the embroidered J+H on the pillowcase. Jason's giggle was a living thing, bright and uncontainable. He face-planted into Hero's flank, his arms circling the dog's ribs. Not the desperate clutch of the storm or the hospital, but something new, something sure. Emily leaned against the door frame, her fingers pressed to her lips. The paperwork avalanche, the home inspections, the parenting classes, the way Ms. Delgado's pen had finally stopped hovering. All of it condensed into this single moment. Jason whispering secrets into Hero's ear. Hero's tail wagging so hard the whole bed shook. The way the evening light gilded them both, as if the sun itself was saying yes. Somewhere beyond the window, a neighbor's wind chime sang. Somewhere deeper, in the marrow of the world, the storm that had brought them together sighed and dissolved. Hero lifted his head suddenly, fixing Emily with those maple syrup eyes. An invitation. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her knees sinking into the duvet as Jason wriggled between her and Hero, his back against her chest, his hands buried in golden fur. A perfect circuit. Outside, a car honked. A skateboard rattled by. Ordinary sounds for an extraordinary day. Jason tilted his head up, his cheek smushed against Hero's shoulder. "Can we get another dog?" Emily choked on a laugh. Hero's ears perked, not in alarm but in consideration, as if he was already evaluating candidates. "Maybe," she said, pressing a kiss to Jason's hair. "But we'll never get another Hero." The dog huffed, his version of a mic drop, and rolled onto his back, demanding belly rubs from both his humans. And as 3 heartbeats aligned in the golden afternoon, one steady, one racing, one thumping in a contented rhythm only dogs understand, Emily realized something. Hero hadn't just saved Jason, hadn't just found her. He'd taught them both how to stitch a family from scraps of trust, how to believe in something bigger than storms. Some heroes wear capes, some wear dog tags, and some? They come with wet noses and cracked paws, and a love that outlasts every dark sky.